so my journey into the understanding of bioidentical hormones came from my own experience, but more importantly, it was from the experience that my wife Penelope was undergoing, because even though we're both the same age, she started having the perimenopause symptomatology. That stimulated me to want to look into that. And up until that point, I had been more traditionally trained. But the interesting part about that traditionally training is that back in the day, when I was a resident and when I first became a medical doctor, it was the standard of care for all females that turned 40, 45, and were going through the perimenopause or menopause for them to be put on hormone replacement. And that was basically evidence-based. So we knew even back then that a woman needed estrogen if you wanted to have good, strong bones. You needed to have estrogen in order for you to have a good, strong heart. And you needed estrogen to be able to decrease the risks of you developing dementia. We were giving them were Premarin, which was a type of a estrogen, and Provera, which was a type of at those days, it was taught to us that it was a progesterone, but it really was not a progesterone. It's a progestin, which is a very different molecule. And then somewhere in that experience, probably some 20 years ago, all of a sudden there was a multi-center study with over 50,000 women. It was called the Women's Health Initiative Study. And in that Women's Health Initiative Study, all of a sudden the data started showing that the women that were taking this Premarin and this Provera were actually having more heart attacks, more breast cancer, and having more significant problems with their health, having strokes. And so all of a sudden, the pendulum in the Western model of therapy went from being pro-hormone to being anti-hormone. So this is where the interesting part begins to flourish. And that is that the data has now clearly shown that it was the synthetic aspects of those medications that are the cause of the problem. Because Premarin is actually comes from the mare of or horses, and it's actually comes from the urine. And so 80% of what's in that molecule of Premarin is actually horse-related stuff, and yet women were taking it because they had 20% of estradiol. And then the Provera was actually the pharmaceutical industry's answer to a woman's need for progesterone. But because progesterone occurs naturally in a woman, they could not patent it. And so there was no money in it. So then they tweaked it, called it Provera. And guess what? The Provera has been one of the primary medications that has caused strokes, breast cancers, and all the things that you hear that are horrible stories. And so now we have been able to have more clarity, but still the traditionalist type of physician many times still poo-poos on the idea of bioidentical hormone replacement because they don't really understand the difference, and they haven't cut themselves up with the data that basically supports the fact that they're totally different. A bioidentical hormone replacement is really what that means. When something is bioidentical, it means that the structure and function of what you're taking is identical to the structure and function of what your body produces naturally. And so even if it is made in a laboratory, even if it's made in a pharmaceutical type of setting, which many times they're compounding pharmacies, what it brings attention to is that it is actually structurally and chemically and functionality identical to what your body produces. And so that's a bioidentical hormone replacement.